Are you tired of spending too much of your hard-earned money at the supermarket? Are you dreaming of farm fresh eggs, homegrown veggies, and homemade everything? Well, welcome to Ditch the Store, where we break free from supermarket dependence and take back control of our food and household essentials. I'm CJ, and I'm here to show you that life is too short for store-bought eggs. So let's get started. G'day everyone, and welcome to Ditch the Store, the podcast that is designed to help you break up with your supermarket. I'm on my own this week, no handy helper. He's had to run off and do family chores. For those that don't know, and I don't know that I mention it all the time, we are a blended family, so between the two of us we have quite a few children. Quite a few. That makes us sound like we've got heaps. We don't. We've got 5 children between the two of us. And he's off doing some stuff with his son. So what I wanted to talk about this week was, because we've moved into the Ditch the Store podcast, I wanted to talk about chickens. And I know I've been talking about chickens for the last 8 weeks, and I think I had promised ages ago that I was going to, about every 8 weeks, change topics and talk about something different. But I just, over the next couple of weeks, I want to go through why chickens are so important to people who are trying to ditch the store. And for those people trying to break up with their supermarket and really take back control of their food supply. And that's whether you're here in Australia, where I am, or whether you're in the US or in England or Europe, South Africa, doesn't matter where you are. I think the cost of living crisis is affecting just about every country in the world right now. And even if it's not directly affecting you, you may be starting to come to terms with the fact that you don't necessarily want to be spending a fortune at the supermarket, and that you'd rather have some more control over your food supply. And chickens are a great place to start, and there's a couple of reasons why. So we're just going to go through that today. I often joke, and I'll probably say it through this episode, but chickens are the gateway drug to homesteading. I say that, and I don't mean that lighthearted about drug use, but it's honestly, once you get chickens, it's like there's a couple of memes that I've seen out lately, and it's if you meet a girl and she starts baking sourdough and talking about getting a milking goat, just buy the chickens and build the coop now. It's easier. And that's pretty much it. Chickens are something that I find, once people get to the point of, okay, they've made the step, they've got chickens, that seems to have a flow-on effect for everything else, where you suddenly start going, you know what, I could just make the bread. It's going to be nicer. It's going to have less preservatives in it. It works out a lot cheaper. So I'll just make the bread. Or you know what, rather than buying herbs all the time, I might just get a little herb planter for my windowsill and just grow some herbs. Or, maybe I'll just can some stuff. Or go down to the farmer's market and buy, 5 kilos of tomato and can it, and then not have to buy canned tomatoes for cooking. So once you get to that point where you take the step and take the plunge and go, yeah, I'm going to get chickens, it seems to be like a domino effect from there on in, where all of a sudden it's sourdough, it's veggie gardens, you're looking at getting a beehive, you are thinking about a milking goat, you start thinking about processing chickens, it just flows from there. Now, it may not be in that succinct order. You may go in different directions. You may not have any interest in baking sourdough, and you might go, no, I just want to grow some veggies. Or you might go all in on bees and go, oh, I'm the worst gardener in the world, which is what I did. I tried to garden and ended up getting bees because I'm such a shit gardener. And for some reason, my plants just wouldn't propagate. I couldn't get fruit. I couldn't get veggies. And so I ended up going, why is this not working? And then the more I learned, bees were a natural progression. I got bees. All of a sudden, I became this amazing veggie gardener. Like, I was growing everything, like, instead of having to go out there. And for those that have gardened in areas where there's maybe not so many bees, I was taking a cotton tip, like a cotton bud for us here in Australia, and I was touching zucchini flower to zucchini flower. So the male zucchini flower versus the female zucchini flower. Or squash, I think that's called in America. I was touching the flowers to each other with a cotton tip to try to get my plants to fruit, because there were not enough bees and they just weren't fruiting. I got a beehive. Within a week, I had so much fruit and veg growing, I didn't know what to do with it. But it all started with a couple of chickens. And it was, in our case, it was a friend lent me an incubator and said, "Oh, why don't you just get some eggs and hatch out some chickens yourself? The kids would probably love it." And so we did it as that process. When we first got them, I'd had them as kids growing up, obviously living on the farm. But when we got them for the kids, it was literally a case of we got an incubator given to us to use, and we went and bought 12 fertile eggs from somebody up in a place called Goulburn, which is not far from us. Put the eggs in the incubator and sat back and said to the kids, "Okay, let's watch." Now, I fucked it up royally. I didn't do the right thing. I kept opening the incubator, the moisture levels weren't right, all kinds of shit. Anyway, out of 12 fertile eggs, we hatched 5 chickens, and I think there were 3 fertile eggs. So there was 8 eggs in total that were fertile out of 12, which is, they were Araucans, they were blue eggs, so it was a relatively good hatch rate, I now know, but back then I thought, oh God, I really screwed it up. But we watched them hatch, and I've got a video of one of them hatching, that very first one, Agnes, who's still alive today. She's 7 years old and still lays an egg occasionally. And that was our first foray into it. But the domino effect that happened from there on in was insane. The veggie garden started, the bees, then we got goats, then fruit trees, it just went nuts. So why chickens and why now? That's my first little, because, I keep notes because otherwise my brain's a sieve. For any women out there that are 50 plus and perimenopausal, you'll totally understand why I write notes to myself, because otherwise I would forget everything. So I don't know about you, but I have been into the shops a couple of times lately and looking at other things and noticed that there is a distinct shortage of eggs. And when they've got signs up saying limit 1 carton per customer, you know that things have gone a bit south as far as supply chains. Now, the funny bit for me is I don't think there is an actual supply of shortage of eggs. I just think that the supply chain is breaking down somewhere. Even though there has been outbreaks of avian flu in certain areas of Australia, and I believe in the US as well, certainly, there's not that many outbreaks that we're in crisis mode, but it's hard to get eggs and they're expensive. What they're selling them for on the shop floor, I mean, granted, if you're looking at cage eggs, or in Australia, cage eggs I think are completely banned now. So if you're looking at barn-laid eggs, they're not as expensive, but it's still cheaper to grow your own. So eggs are expensive. They're hard to get. With the price hikes, I guess there's some people who don't want to buy them at that price, but there's always people that will pay the higher prices, and so they'll just keep selling them at that higher price. I think I saw pasture-raised eggs, the last time I looked, were $13.50 to $14.50 a carton in Australia. That's Australian dollars. For those in the US, work that out. It's for you guys, that would be I think it's a bit less. So because your dollar's worth more than ours. Our dollar's terrible at the moment. But it's still expensive when you consider what you can raise pasture-raised eggs for. It's expensive. So having your own chickens is a great alternative as far as the cost goes, because you know that you can raise them a bit cheaper. But also your supply chain is your backyard. Your chicken coop is your supply chain. So the breakdown is never going to happen in the same way. Now, that being said, if you're hatching them out like we did, you've still got to wait 5 months before they're going to start laying eggs. So you can get point of lay. You'll see it sometimes advertised as POE, which is point of lay birds, which means that they are confirmed hens. You don't have to worry about a rooster crowing in the middle of the night, and they do crow in the middle of the night. Point of lay birds are confirmed hens, and they are literally at that point of lay. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to lay the second you get them home. That means that they are within that month of getting ready to lay. Now, we have discussed it previously. Your Isaac Browns will lay much earlier. They usually lay around that 4-month mark. The heritage breed birds will definitely go later. And I was starting to get really worried about our Brahmins because they're 5-6 months and they still haven't laid. And I went and had a look, and I found out that our Brahmins actually are a later layer. So 7-8 months is pretty normal. So they should be getting ready real soon, Can't wait. I'll post a photo of our first egg from the brahmas. But once you start getting them, most hens will lay daily or every other day, depending on the breed. You are likely to get anywhere between, all the ones that I list, you are likely to get between 4 and 7 eggs a week off each hen. Now that adds up. If you're not huge egg eaters, you will be inundated really quickly. If you are average egg eaters, you'll probably find you have just the right amount with maybe 3 to 5 hens. And if you're big egg eaters, then you might want to go 5 to 7 hens, and you probably will have to still be a bit careful. One of my customers regularly buys, every fortnight, buys 8 cartons of eggs. Now, she does share it with her sister, so 4 go to her sister, 4 to her, but that's 4 cartons of eggs a week that her husband and her 2 children are eating. It might seem like a lot of eggs to some people, but they are a superfood. And we'll talk about that later too. Now, raising chickens is much, much easier than you think. So I always look at them as being that gateway drug to homesteading, because they're not a hard ask. They're not. Goats are hard. People, if you've been on any goat pages anytime soon, if you haven't, go join a goat page. Raising Goats Australia, Dairy Goats, Goat Knowledge. There's a whole bunch of pages out there. Go jump on one of those pages. Goats have a great knack for finding new and interesting ways to kill themselves. And I don't say that lightly. Goats are not for the faint-hearted, and they're not for the beginner homesteader as such. If you are not sure about your abilities with animals, do not start with goats. Do not start with sheep. Do not even start with cows. Cows are pretty easy. I've got to be honest. Cows, I find them pretty easy. But for some people, because of their sheer size, that would be off-putting. But things like rabbits, ducks, chickens, quail, even pheasants and turkeys to a degree, would be a great starter animal. They're an animal that you can really find your feet with. And at the end of the day, it's a learning curve. And once you get to a point where you're super comfortable and super confident with your chickens, moving on to another livestock animal is going to be a much easier ask. Chickens, it's pretty hard to fuck it up with chickens. You can, don't get me wrong. I've seen people do it, but it is pretty hard to fuck it up. So you don't even need to have a farm for chickens. That's a good bit. And that's the same. That goes the same for ducks and rabbits. I've seen people on very small urban homesteads raising rabbits quite successfully. Now, in Australia, rabbits are considered a pest, and I believe we have to be licensed to keep them. I've never tried keeping them. I've never even looked into keeping them. I know that there are breeders in this area that keep mohair rabbits. So they keep them for the hair, for their fibre. But in the States, I know that there are lots of urban farms out there, little urban homesteads, that are raising successfully meat rabbit industries, and they're doing really well with it. It doesn't require a lot of work. They're a small animal. They're easy to contain with the right fencing, with the right cages, but you really can't screw it up too badly. They are very easy to look after, and chickens are the same. Ducks, I think, are also the same. Geese, they're pretty easy. They're actually pretty hardy, and I grew up around geese. My mum still has a flock of geese that she keeps, and she sells the eggs. There are people out there, there's a big market for goose eggs. But those kind of animals are a good starter animal. They're a great one to really get your teeth kind of, cut your teeth on. Urban environment, you can do it. You don't need a farm. You literally are checking them in the morning and in the evening, and that's it. You're not having to bring them in and shear them and worm them and drench them and delouse them and excuse me, coughing like crazy. You're not having to do all that. You collect eggs, you make sure they've got food, and then you have some maintenance chores that you have to do, once a week, maybe once a month, maybe depending on the chore. But it literally 5 to 10 minutes a day. And don't let anybody tell you that kids can't look after chickens, because my kids, when I had my knee surgery back in October, I couldn't walk up the yard. And the reason I couldn't was because they didn't want me walking on uneven surfaces until my knee had strengthened enough from the replacement. and crutches. I would go up, literally, I would walk up the fence line and stand on the outside of the fence line to make sure that the kids were okay doing what they were doing. But the kids were like, Mum, just stay inside. We're fine. We know what we're doing. And they were going up, feeding the animals, watering them, collecting eggs, making sure, doing a head count, making sure everybody was okay, feet were pointing in the right direction. They were looking after the goats for me. So they're 15 and 13 now, but they were able to do that not on their own. I didn't trust them to do it on their own, like for the goats. The chooks they were fine with. Probably 6 months ago, I was a bit nervous about it still, but now, in all honesty, they are doing it as good, if not better than me. They're quicker than me, they're more agile than me, so they can certainly get up there and get it done. 5 to 10 minutes a day is what I've got listed here. And that's pretty much it. 5 to 10 minutes a day. And then you have, a couple of other things you have to do. Now, another thing is, shout out to, if you're on Instagram at all, go and have a look at Ballerina Farms. Now, I say this, anybody that's homesteading, it doesn't matter how they're homesteading, I still support you. I think you're doing a great job. Ballerina Farms has copped a lot of flack over the last couple of years. Every time I look at it, I think, oh my God, she's so pretty. Her hair's always done perfectly. Her makeup's always done. She looks like she's wearing Laura Ashley, for those of us born, that were around in the 80s, Laura Ashley dresses every time she's out milking a cow or collecting eggs or, baking sourdough. And some people say it's very unrealistic and that it's too polished for a homestead. And I have to be honest, our homestead looks nothing like hers. The sourdough sometimes looks like it's growing another life. The chickens sometimes look a bit mangy and there's feathers coming out and there's chicken shit places that shouldn't be and there's goat poo everywhere, and it doesn't look like that. I never look that polished. I don't. It's not me. I don't have that ability to look that polished in the morning. She obviously does. And you know what? Power to her. Good on her for doing that. But people get really hung up that their coop has to look like this Taj Mahal palace and has to look like something off Instagram in order to be a chicken coop. And that's just simply not true. Chicken coops are dirty, dusty places. They have chicken shit in them. They have chickens in them. They have chicken food. They have chicken water. They're going to get messy and there will be lice in there occasionally and chicken shit that needs scraping out and things like that. And it's no good kind of standing there and going, oh, well, hang on, no, it shouldn't look like that. It should look amazing. It should look like this. It should, have to have this perfect white chicken coop with this perfect run and these perfect water fountains and sign out the front, egg palace, things like that. It doesn't have to look like that. It can be secondhand materials, corrugated iron that's got rust on it, wire mesh that you've recycled from, some other cage that you've now got around the chicken coop. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you want it perfect and you want the polished look, go for it. More power to you. I don't care if you do that, because at the end of the day, if you're still keeping chickens, then you're still doing the right thing. But if you look and think, mine's never going to look like that, don't panic. There's so many homesteaders out there whose chicken coops look nothing like the ones we see on Instagram, and they still function and the chickens are still happy and we still get shit tins of eggs. So don't stress about it. Now, I did mention before that eggs are the superfood. So this is another reason why I think eggs are a great starter product for homesteaders to kind of break into. And that's because they are little nuggets of goodness. They are packed with all the great oils, the oils that humans are meant to eat, not your seed oils, but real animal cholesterol, which is what we need to function. We actually can't survive without cholesterol. So when people talk about, oh, they've got high levels of cholesterol, just remember that 100 years ago, what we consider high cholesterol now, 100 years ago was considered normal. So those people who are eating those high animal fat diets are actually now proving to be much, much healthier than people that are eating high plant fat diets. And if you don't believe me, go check out a doctor called Dr. Anthony Chaffee. He absolutely lives the carnivore lifestyle. And while I'm not saying you have to live a carnivore lifestyle to be a homesteader, eggs are a superfood and they are so nutritious and have such dense nutrient qualities that you really can't go without them if you're trying to control your food supply and still feed your family a really nutritious food. Eggs are a great place to start, or a great key component of your homesteading diet. They've got the good fats, they've got vitamin Bs in it, heaps of iron in them. And the best bit is if they're pasture raised, what they've found now through testing eggs, if they are pasture raised and the chickens have a varied free range diet because they are omnivores, if they're eating their own bugs and grasses as well as their layer pellets, which are the complete food for them, if they're doing all that, what they found is that the eggs off pasture raised chickens, because of that varied diet, are actually healthier than the eggs out of a barn raised chicken. So that means your backyard chickens are producing healthier eggs than what you could buy at the supermarket anyway. And to me, that's just like a no-brainer. Like, who wouldn't want that? If you can get the healthiest of a particular food group and you can get it cheaper than the shops and from your own backyard, no-brainer. Also, too, they're versatile. We love eggs in this house for the obvious reasons. But OJ, for example, has bacon and eggs every morning for breakfast, literally every morning. It takes 5 minutes to cook an egg in a fry pan. So he's a fried egg with 2 rashers of bacon, and he still eats grains. So he has a wrap, just like a lead bread wrap. And he wraps it around the bacon and eggs and usually puts a little sprinkle of cheese on there as well. And that's what he has for breakfast every morning. Now, since he's been doing that, he has been performing better at school. He has much more energy. He's much more focused. We've moved. We don't even have breakfast cereal in the house anymore. MJ, I don't force her to eat breakfast. I was never a breakfast eater as a teenager, and I really have changed my opinion about forcing kids to eat over the years. I hated being forced to eat, and I'm now at a point where she's 15. If she can decide for herself if she's hungry, and if she doesn't feel hungry, I don't insist that she eat. So she does have breakfast some mornings. Usually she will have yogurt and fruit for brekkie if she's having it. She doesn't like having eggs in the morning, but she'll eat eggs at other times of the day. But to me, having eggs for breakfast, I would have an omelette every morning with just a bit of cheese and bacon. I would literally have that every morning without fail. That would be my ideal breakfast every day. But we also do use eggs in a lot of other things. So we make like a carnivore cream cheese kind of bread instead of bread when I'm not having bread because I go off bread quite often. But custard. And I've got a Thermomix. I'm one of those weird people that are in that cult of the Thermomix. We make custard from scratch in the Thermomix, and I just cut out all the sugar that's in it. Sometimes I'll put a little dash of honey in there. Sometimes, what's that other stuff? Agava? I can never say it. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of that in there. Sometimes I'll put a bit of sugar in there, depending on how many kids are here and who wants to eat it. But we make egg custard in the Thermomix, and it's just perfect. It is the best custard I've ever had. But we do lime glassing, so we preserve them if we've got too many. Now that I'll do a whole other episode on lime glassing eggs because there's a catch to it, and I won't go into it now because I'll get sidetracked. But you can freeze them. You can cook them and freeze them. They don't always. You can boil them and freeze them, but they won't always come back. They come back a bit rubbery. You can freeze them raw, just crack them into an ice cube dish. So ice cube trays that are big ice cube trays, you can crack a raw egg into that and freeze it, pop it out of the tray, put it into a clip seal bag in the freezer, and then when you want to add it, but that only works for things like cooking. So if you're making cakes or breads or things like that you were adding eggs to. But we also are big on having quiches for dinner. We quite often, usually once a week, we'll have a quiche for dinner. And I don't muck around with my egg quiches. They'll say 6 eggs and 9. Stuff 6 eggs, I'm putting 9 eggs in there. I've got no problems with that. So we are big egg consumers here for the obvious reasons. I've also got to a habit where I've started putting, and this is going to gross some people out, but occasionally I have a raw egg in a milkshake. I love, because we have raw milk here from the goats. The goats have all stopped milking for the year now, so we're out of raw milk and we're back to normal milk. But I will drop a raw egg into a milkshake and blend it up. And you know what? You can't even taste there's a raw egg in there, but I know I'm getting a protein hit. I know that I'm getting a massive dump of protein off that egg that I've dropped into the milkshake. Now, that being said, I know people will squeamish about that and go, I'm not eating a raw egg. That's disgusting. People have been eating raw eggs for years. It's not going to kill you. Unless I'll caveat that with, I am not a dietitian, I'm not a doctor, I'm not even a scientist. So if the egg has listeria on the outside of the shell, they don't recommend you eat it raw. And listeria is the big one to watch for. That being said, we've never had any issue with listeria, and it's 7 years now that we've been keeping chickens, and we've never had an issue with listeria. So, but I have to give that caveat because I don't want you to get sick from having a raw egg and then go, oh, CJ told me. You still have to, I wash, if I'm cracking an egg into something, no matter what, I wash the shell before I crack the egg into it. And I do that so that if there's any shit, feathers, lice, anything on the outside of the egg, I'm washing it before I crack it. And that's because our eggs don't get washed. We leave the bloom on them to keep them fresher for longer, but we wash them right before we crack them, just so that if there is anything on the shell, it's not going into our food, because I don't really want to eat chicken shit. Okay, so I've already mentioned that they are more nutritious if they are your home-grown ones rather than the store-bought ones. And the best bit is obviously that you'll get heaps of eggs per week. Even when you go through the molt stage, what you'll find is they don't all molt at the same time. And if you know that you're coming up to a molt stage, so usually about 12 months after they start laying, they go through a molt cycle. When they go through that, make sure you put some eggs aside leading up to it when you know you're getting close. Just go back off your use of your eggs for a little while, and you'll find that it doesn't take, you'll kind of go through what you've got, but you should be able to see yourself through the 3-week period kind of thing where they're molting. And some will molt longer than 3 weeks. Don't hold me to the 3 weeks. Some will go longer, some will go less. You'll notice that they're coming back when their feathers start growing back. Now, the other reason why I say that they're a good starter animal for homesteaders is dual purpose birds. So even if you think, I'm never going to kill a bird to eat it, I'm never going to kill a chook and cook it and use it for food, don't necessarily jump into thinking that straight away. The number of people I've seen who've got chickens for eggs and have then suddenly gone, oh, it's not that much of a leap to go to keeping meat birds. So if you don't pick an Isa Brown as your chicken breed, if you go with a heritage bird and you think maybe I would like to test the water of what it would be like to dispatch and grow my own chicken meat, I would suggest the following 4 breeds: Australorps, Orpingtons, so sometimes they're called buff Orpingtons, Rhode Island Red, and Barred Rocks. Now, you can also do the Wyandotte. I never say it properly, Wyandotte. They're also not a bad option for a dual purpose. And the reason I say that is because if you, say, got day olds and you've got a rooster in amongst those are all big birds. They're all birds that would make it worthwhile to try your hand at dispatching and cooking your own birds that have enough meat on them to make it worth the effort. And they all lay eggs. They're all good egg layers. So that would be my top tip. Don't just go into it with an open mindset that there is a possibility down the track that once you've had egg birds for a certain period of time that you may then change over and go, you know what, I'm going to try with meat birds. And, with meat birds, I always say getting the Cornish cobs and the Freedom Rangers and things like that are sometimes better because they grow so quick and it makes it a very efficient way of getting chicken meat. But I also love my heritage breeds, and if you can use a heritage breed as your test run to see how you go with dispatching and cleaning and cooking your own, then that's probably a really good gateway into meat birds. So don't be completely turned off to the idea. Believe me, like I said, the domino effect will hit you and all of a sudden you'll have pigs in a backyard and sheep over here and a milking goat, and then you'll go, oh no, I need a Jersey because I don't get enough milk off the goats and I want to make cheese, and that's exactly what happened here. So yeah, don't discount it straight away. Now, the main reason that we do say that they are one to go to start is because you can start in that urban environment or on a small farm if you've only got 1 or 2 acres. If you are then going to move to a bigger farm, you will find that you will go hell for leather on the chickens. We ended up, I think, at the most, and we've dropped right down. We haven't restocked yet because there was a whole bunch of issues with supply here. We at one point had 60 chickens, which is a lot of chickens, and we've dwindled it back down now. We're at a point where we need to restock and resupply, and we're just working out our supply chains now. But you can really step up gradually, so you can do that very concerted kind of like, all right, I've got 10 chickens and I'm getting this many eggs, and now I've got some spare cartons that I'm selling or giving away to somebody or trading with somebody. And then, okay, well, I'll get another 10 chickens, and then I'll have enough to sell to either workmates or family and friends, trading them out, bartering them for different things. It's a very succinct way of stepping up what you're doing with your homestead, where you can just gradually increase it without putting too much strain on yourself on the farm, because they don't take much effort to look after, and looking after 10 chickens is not much different to looking after 20 chickens. When you're stepping up to those kind of 60 chickens like we did, that started to impact a little bit more, because it took a bit longer to do those more weekly and monthly chores like cleaning out the coop, delousing, worming, checking, trimming spurs, cutting. We sometimes had to clip wings to stop them flying out of the chicken area. So it did take a little bit more effort the more that we got, but realistically, God, at the moment up there, I think there's 25 to 30 chickens. I don't know the exact number because we've got a couple that don't refuse to live up there. But that's no different to me to keeping 5. It really hasn't made that much impact to me. Like I say, it's not until you step up to the bigger numbers that you really kind of notice it. But what you do notice is a bit of a change in other things like composting manure. Certainly with 30 chickens, composting manure, we have plenty of it. Now, we recompost back into the yard because we rotationally graze. But even in an urban environment, once you get up past that 10 chicken mark, you'll notice you have a lot more manure. Now, that's okay. You bag up your manure, put it at the front and say $5 a bag. And believe me, people will come and pay for it. If they think that's fresh, good quality chicken manure and they're a gardener, they'll be all over it. You might even be able to barter with them on something else, or if they find out that you've got chickens, they'll probably want eggs off you as well. But chicken manure is perfect for composting. So it's a good little cycle of kind of rotating everything through once you do get the chickens. So that's almost it for this week. I really wanted to brush onto that as far as, chickens are a great place to start in that whole cycle of, I want to take back control of my food supply. How am I going to do this without it impacting my family, without it causing me to have all this extra work to do, but also give you an opportunity to kind of put your toe in the water and test what it'll be like having livestock, because you still have to be there for them daily. Now, that being said, we go away quite often for a whole day, sometimes for a whole weekend, and there are certain things you can do and certain systems that you can put in place that mean that you don't have to worry about your chickens for a whole weekend, and you'll come home and they will still be fine. So you won't have to worry about it. But you need to put those things in place if you're going to do that. Under normal circumstances, you would be checking them daily. You would be checking the eggs and clearing the eggs out daily. You'll be feeding them daily. So it's a good way to test the water and see whether or not that lifestyle is really for you. If it's not for you, you know what? You would sell chickens for us here in Australia, it's Gumtree, because I know Facebook bans most sales of any kind of animals. Our marketplace here for selling animals is usually Gumtree, but I'm sure there's lots of other places in the US that you can advertise. You would sell chickens that were laying so quickly if you advertise them for sale. And if you said, look, we tested the water, it just wasn't for us, we're selling lock, stock and barrel, you get the coop, the chickens, the whole lot, you would get rid of them in no time. So don't stress about stepping into it and then going, what do I do if I don't like it? What do I do if it's not for me? It's not what I thought it was going to be. You will find somebody to take your chickens in your coop, okay? And the really important bit about that is don't beat yourself up about it. If you try and test the water and go, nah, this is not, I like to travel, I like to go away. I didn't think I'd be this tied down to them, even though it's only 5 to 10 minutes a day. Like I say, on most occasions, it would be a daily check. If you suddenly go, no, that's not what I had planned, don't beat yourself up about it. You tested the water, it didn't work, move on from that. There are so many other things you can do if livestock is not your choice for homesteading. Bake your sourdough bread, make your cheese. God, you can even homestead without having a garden, to be honest. You just go down to the farmers markets at the end of the day when they've got, 10 kilos of tomatoes still sitting there because they haven't sold them, and say, look, I'll buy a tray. How much can you do me a tray for? And buy 5 kilos and bring it home, can it, process it, do all the things with it. You don't even have to have a garden, but you can still start and you can still test the water. But if you're going to test the water with livestock, chickens are my number one pick for the first animal that you want to do it with. Anyway, just remember, if you're doing that, you're basically a homesteader. If you get chickens, you are done. You're a homesteader. Just call yourself a homesteader and be done with it. Get the sourdough out. If you haven't got the sourdough out, listen up, because I think next month, what are we now? April. Yeah. So next month, I am discussing all things sourdough. And this is from a person who really struggles to eat bread sometimes, but sourdough, I don't get the gut ache. I don't feel sick after I've eaten it. So if you're somebody who struggled with gluten, but you're not celiac, then sourdough. Next month, we're talking about it. But for the rest of this month, we're still going to talk about some stuff to do with chickens. So I will see you all next week. Don't forget, in the background here, I've got my book is on Amazon, Kindle Unlimited. If you're a Kindle Unlimited member, you can go and get it for free and have a read of it and let me know what you think. The other book is nearly just about done. I have got a very busy weekend ahead of me, which this will come out on Monday. So by the time this comes out, I will be able to artificially inseminate goats, because I am going to Victoria to work with a group from the Dairy Goat Association of Australia to learn how to do artificial insemination in goats, so that I can artificially inseminate our girls, and I can offer those services to people in the area, like the immediate area where I live, for those that don't have bucks or don't want to have a buck but want to have a dairy goat. So I'm going to go do that. Fingers crossed. I'll be looking at goats' vaginas all weekend, which is just an awesome thought. I think, and a handy helper said to me, "You're on your own on that one." I'm actually flying down from Canberra to Melbourne and then driving to the farm where they're doing the course, and then I have to drive back to Melbourne, which is it's about an hour and a half drive each way, and get back on a plane. And I can't fly back to Canberra. I have to fly to Sydney because there's no late flights from Melbourne to Canberra. Go figure. On a Saturday afternoon, there's just no late flights. So I have to fly to Sydney and then catch the train out of Sydney, and the handy helper's going to pick me up kind of halfway between Canberra and Sydney. It's a long day. It's going to be a very, very long day, and I'll let you know how I go. Hopefully I'll post some cool videos through the next week. Anyway, that is it for me for this week. Have an awesome week. Keep thinking about the things you can do to get your homesteading journey started and to ditch the store and take back control of your own food supply. Until next week, bye for now. Well, that's it for today's episode of Ditch the Store. If you're loving the journey to self-sufficiency, be sure to subscribe. You can also leave a review for us or share this episode with a friend who's ready to break up with their supermarket. If you've got questions or success stories, we'd love to hear about them on the socials. You can also find me at www.mojahomestead.net. Until next time, keep raising, growing and making. And remember, life's too short for store-bought eggs.